Hey folks, John Thompson, Spring Framework Guru. So as my students go through the course, a lot of times they run into problems, something that they did and don't understand and can't find a way around, and then they reach out to me and ask me for help. And I have a student that ran into a problem today and gave me the error message, but not enough detail for me to figure out what's going on. So I asked him to upload his project to GitHub and let me take a look at that way so I can see the complete picture and troubleshoot this. So what I'm going to step you through today is troubleshooting this. He's taking my Spring Core course. He's working through things and he's having problems with beans getting wired up, and I'm not sure why. I have not looked at the code yet. He's just shared the repository with me, and in this video we're going to go on to GitHub. I'll fork it into my GitHub account, download it. We'll open it up in IntelliJ, take a look at it, reproduce the error, and troubleshoot it from there. So I honestly have no idea what's going on. I have not looked at this code at all. He is following a project in my course on the Spring Framework where we build an e-commerce like site, and I'm not sure where he's at in the course right now. There's a lot of variables at play of what could be wrong, but I'm going to load it up and take a look and see if we can figure out what's going on with this. And P.S. I want to add to this, what you're about to see is completely uncensored, unedited, me fumbling through code, toggling back and forth on different things, and I'm showing you my troubleshooting process. So I do get into some evils like cut and paste and cheating from off my own project to see what I implemented. So don't judge, and enjoy this raw, uncensored look at me troubleshooting a student's project. Okay, so I've asked the student to upload his project to GitHub, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and fork it to my own repository. And this gives me a chance to come in and clone it. So I'm going to go ahead and clone this. Copy that over. And come over here, git clone, paste in that URL. So that is there now. Let's take a quick look at it. So the project's down there. So what I want to do now is jump over to IntelliJ and get that project into IntelliJ, and we'll start taking a look at it. So I'm going to come up here and say new project from existing sources. And this is the guy that we want. So I'm going to click OK. It's a Maven project, click next. I'm going to leave all the defaults here. I'm not too worried about that. And I'm doing some testing with Artifactory for my DevOps course. I do not want that active. So this is going to come through. And I need to select a JDK. I'm running the -40 JDK. I'm out of date. They're up to -111 right now, so I need to get that fixed up. My own oversight on my personal system. So now the project's coming up. IntelliJ is telling me about, oh, that went away. So IntelliJ was complaining about the VCS not being there, version control system being Git, and let's go in and run this and see what's going on. So I'm just going to right click in IntelliJ, say run him. It's going to run the Spring Boot application, and let's take a look, see what he's unhappy about. All right, we blew up. So try to find this DAO authentication provider. It cannot. So the qualifier DAO authentication provider is not being found for some reason. So what is that supposed to be? It's triggering down here, and this guy is failing to get wired up. Take a little closer at this. And sometimes the errors cascade. So let's scroll over and The affectionately call it blowing up, because when Java pops like this, there's quite a bit going on. So ultimately, it can't find user detail service. So that's the core problem. So I'm going to take a look here at services. So this is the service. And this is the interface that it implements. This looks like his implementation. And he's doing a service. And let's see here. I'm going to Spring Data JPA. Let's double check that. I didn't even look at the active profile, so he was setting that active. And just to double check, let's take a look at the top of the stack trace here. Somewhere in the chatter, we can see the active profiles. We should be able to see them. Ah, there we are. Overlooked it. So that is in fact being set, so that's good. And I am going to guess, let's take a quick look at this. Oh. User detail service, so that should get wired up by type. So for some reason he's not finding that. I'm going to copy this and see if this makes a difference. So what's happening is this bean is going to get a name of user service impl, and I would expect it to get wired up by type, but that doesn't seem happening. So I'm going to give it an explicit name of user service and see if that gets it going. Still not happy here. No qualifying type of user detail service. So I was looking at user service, so that was a mistake on my part. So let's go back and look at this closer. User detail service. Let's click in on this. Where do you live? Aha. So that's the problem. So user detail service, that is a interface within, where are we at? Spring Security Core. Now I can't remember what I did in the course for this, to be honest. Let's take a look at what we're doing here. So that makes sense now. The user detail service is not being wired up. And I'm going to cheat and look, see what I did in this project. So I have the source code. The problem is I wrote this months ago. So user detail service. Taking a look through here, trying to see how I implemented that. So this user detail service, and copy that and see where I implemented that. So I provided this implementation of him. Where did I put you? under security. So this is what he needs to implement, and it looks like he missed that. So services security, let's take a look at, I'm going to copy this guy over. Guessing he did not implement it. Take a quick look here. Nope, you did not implement that. So that's the problem. We're missing that service implementation, and that's easy enough to add. I'm just going to be consistent with what I did in the course. And I put him in services security. So let's jump over here. New package. And I am totally cheating here, assuming that we can cut and paste everything and life will be good. And his user server is not implementing this find user by name, so that's important. So I'm going to steal shamelessly from my other project and just double check that. And this little Spring Data JPA stuff, so we just need to implement that guy. Now that should work. So he's happy now. And the last thing I need to do is come back over here. And it's important to name this user details service so it gets picked up. And let's try running this now. Now that we have an implementation of it, life should be happy. Oh. And what I do, grab the, should implement user detail service. Oh, my bad. Change the interface. My mistake here. I forget what I'm doing here. So, come in. I think we just want to do all right. Double check this. So user repository. You're going to need to modify this as well. So to add in the find by username. And this is a Spring Data JPA, allows you to dynamically add those. And we'll come into the repository. Where were we at on this? Spring data JPA, spring data JPA. That's the guy I want. Where did I put this guy? Oh, my mistake, looking at the wrong package. So repositories, let's see what he's got going on here. My mistake here again. Double check that. User repository extends CRUD repository. Exactly what we want. Okay, so we have the user service implements, gets a hold of the user repository, returns back find by username. So now let's see if we can run this guy. Converter. Where are we at? So we need to implement this converter. One more problem. And this is an important converter because we're converting over to the Spring data or Spring security users. Make sure that's the right one. User to user details. And we don't have a converters class or package, so I'm going to add that. And what did I call that class? I just want to be consistent with what I did in that. So I usually name the class object to target object. I'm just going to grab this whole guy here. Shamelessly cut and paste. Do not try this at home. Cut and paste will get you in trouble. Just a couple things here. I'm going to put this into security. So this is another interface that's utilized by Spring Security. And we need to provide an implementation of it. And get him imported. So our user object is wrong also. Aren't you happy there? Oh, did I import the wrong user? So it's got a couple naming conventions different there for me. So and he's missing enabled. So I am going to go steal my definition. So my user is a little bit different than his. So I'm going to implement that for him completely. I am again stealing shamelessly from the project I already did. His user is here, so we want to replace this. Get enabled. There we are. And role is a little bit different, so let's see what he did there. Where's that? Usually get roles. Let's see here. We got a couple other domain objects not there. And the problem is he's working on a branch. I'm not quite sure where he's at in the course, so I have some objects that are created later in the course that aren't there yet, but let's go ahead and implement these also. Oh. So we need this class. Yep. We're missing cart also, and I know I'm positive he adds that later, so I'm going to comment that out for now. not the prettiest thing I'm doing here, but I'm just trying to get this through this form. Let's see if this runs now. No property found, username, user. So this is getting thrown out by the user repository. Find by username. So what did we change here? So it's saying it's not finding a property username. And I have username here. Okay, so it's case difference. Username versus username. So let's take a closer look at this. There's the problem. So his implementation is user name, all lowercase. And we're gonna need to fix it here. So that's why that was unhappy. So minor differences between what he implemented and what I had implemented. Let's see if we can run happily now. Oh. Of course, we blew up something there that's dependent. Try this one more time. Luckily, Java is strongly typed, and the compiler caught that little error for us. It looks like we are up and running now. So a couple things that are wrong from what we saw, and let me recap what was going on there. I moved around quite a bit and wrongly cut and paste code from the project I had already established, so that's my bad. Don't do that at home. So do not cut and paste. You know, I'm a hypocrite for saying that. So what was going on is we were implementing Spring Security in the course, and where's this configuration? Where does this all start off at? So the Spring Security config is going to be looking for a user detail service, and the user detail service is a Spring Security interface that we need to implement. So we had to provide an implementation of that user detail service. So here's my implementation of that, providing that, and user details impl. That actually ran though. I thought, double check my impl of it, because I thought user details impl would need to be a component. Double check that as I go through this. Okay, I must be declaring that elsewhere. So that's got to be declared in the configuration, I'm guessing. So this gets wired in, and that's an interface, and that was the problem. This interface was not implemented. So when you're providing a DAO authentication provider for Spring Security, you're expected to provide an implementation of the user detail service, which implements that, and then the next interface you need to implement is also user details. And what this does is a couple common interfaces that you can implement. We had to add a converter to go from our user JPA type to the user details type that Spring Security wants. So it allows us to do the custom mapping, which happens in that map converter object that we added. So what this does, it takes our user, which is our JPA object, domain object, and converts it over to a user details object. And this object again implements an interface provided by Spring Security so that we can map our JPA hard type to this type, and then Spring Security happily works with that. Okay, I've made all the changes, and the last thing I want to do is come in and get these committed up to GitHub. So what I'm going to do is I come in here, git commit directory, and provided commit and push. And I'm going to go ahead and ignore the warning from IntelliJ, and we are pushing up there. So I need to give it my password. That is successful, and I'm going to jump over here. So that is done there. And what I want to do is let him know about it. So I'll give him a pull request. And I'm going to email him what's going on after I record this video. And that is done. So now he's going to get a pull request and see my code changes of what I implemented. And that's my dog shaking his head. Thank you, Jake. And he'll be able to see a working copy. Okay, so what happened there, I can see how he messed up what was happening. User service and user detail service, very, very similar naming conventions. And I overlooked it initially when I was looking at it. You could see that in the preceding video until I went, oh, user detail service. So I came into this cold, and because I wrote this over a year ago for the software for this course. So I forgot what I'd done and went in and found that what he had not implemented was the user detail service, and it's how Spring Security works when we're setting up a DAO authentication provider for Spring Security. Spring Security provides a couple interfaces that we have to provide implementations for that allows us to use a DAO authentication provider and go out and get the data and then map it back into Spring Security. I actually like the way the guys implemented it. It's pretty slick and very versatile to use, but when you're working with Spring Security and the Spring Framework, you have to provide those implementations, which was not provided here, and that's why things were blowing up, because he was starting up and we were asking for the user detail service and there wasn't one provided, and that's what we essentially did, is to provide that implementation so Spring Security could start working.